In this video, we're going to talk all about stitch gauge, which simply means the distance between your stitches and your rows. And this is really important in making your work look really nice. It also ensures you're not using too much or too little yarn. And there are a couple of different pitfalls you can fall into if you don't have the proper stitch gauge. So let's talk about it. So for the majority of our project, we are looking for about 4 stitches per inch and about 6 rows per inch. So I've brought a couple of punch needle samples with me to demonstrate the different pitfalls that people can fall into. So on this little swatch right here, you might be able to tell it is really curling up on itself, and that's because this little swatch is overly packed with stitches. If I flip this over to the back and use my little handy dandy stitch ruler, I can count these stitches, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stitches per inch. So almost double what I need to be using. And there are no empty spaces. It is completely packed. If you punch like this, if you are an over puncher, you're going to use way more yarn than you need to. And when you remove your work from the frame, it's going to curl up like a scroll. So you don't want to overpack your work by putting in more than 4 stitches per inch. Now here we have a section that's a little bit better. You can tell it's laying flatter. If I measure this out, I've got 3 stitches per inch. So the problem with this one is if I consistently punch at 3 stitches per inch, when I flip this over, you can see, I'm gonna end up with some bald spots on my work, and we don't want that. It's okay to be able to see a little bit of monk's cloth on the back of your work, but we don't want to see it on the front. The other issue that this punch swatch has is that the stitches are not staggered. So you can see they're staggered over here, they're not all lining up, but right here, see how all those stitches are in a row? That's how you end up with bald spots in your work. So the gauge is a little bit better, but there is no staggering. And here's what I mean by staggering. So imagine that my fingers are stitches, and if I line up my stitches exactly, you can see there's little spaces between them. Okay, but if I just offset my fingers just a little bit and lay them in like a bricklaying pattern or a staggered pattern, now you can see they're interlocking and there is no space between them. That's how we want to lay in our punch needle stitches. So here's our third swatch. If I put my ruler up here, I've got 4 stitches per inch. And I've got, let's see right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and change rows per inch. So I don't want my stitches to be packed on top of each other in the rows either. It's okay to be able to see a little bit of monk's cloth, and you can. A couple places where you can see there's a little bit of monk's cloth showing through. And when I flip it over, it's nice and evenly spread. You can tell that the stitches are not perfectly lined up like they are in this one. So this is a really good swatch of stitches where the rows and the stitches are spaced evenly. If you're having trouble with this, one thing you can do is count the weave in the fabric. So I'm going to punch into a hole, and then I'm going to skip 1 hole, skip 2 holes, into the 3rd. 1, 2, into the 3rd. So I'm just punching a straight line, and you can count if it helps you to always count. You can. I have found that once you kind of find your groove, it's easy to hit that stitch gauge. Then when we turn back around, we're punching in the middle of the stitch beside. So it's okay if there's a little bit, you can see a little bit of monk's cloth between those rows. We want our rows to be neighbors, not BFFs. So it's okay, there's a little bit of space between. And I can just keep practicing that. So That's about what your stitches should look like. Now, this is not how you would fill in a section, so let's talk about that. Take this out, reset. When you fill in a section, you're not wanting to go up, down like a typewriter. We want to follow the outline of the pattern and then move our way to the interior of the pattern. So I'm going to start by pushing or punching down. And another little tip for these little yarn tails is take your hand underneath your gripper frame, and at the start and the end of each row, just kind of pull that tail out, make it a little bit shorter underneath, and then we're going to keep punching, so stabbing and dragging. So now I'm following my pattern line with the open part of my needle facing the direction I want to go, and I am going to outline this entire shape and then slowly work my way in. So I get asked a lot, what section do you start with first? I like to start with the most interior sections first. So if I was starting on this flower, for instance, I would do the flower center and then I would do the petals. But technically you can start wherever you want. I like to end with the background. So start with all the interior stuff and then punch the background. Okay, I'm following my pattern line, staggering my stitches, giving a little bit of breathing room. And then when it's time to change directions, just rotate my needle. And now I'm punching the other way. If in doubt, if you're not sure, am I over punching, am I under punching, are there bald spaces on my work? What you can do is flip your gripper frame over and just take a look. So I'm going to flip this around, and those are looking really good. Now this is a number 10 needle, which is the shortest loop I can make with an Oxford needle, with a rug wool, thick rug wool. So it would be easier to make bald spots on this because the loop doesn't come up and cover the area as much. So important, really important if you're using a shorter needle to really check your staggering of your stitches, because I don't want to end up with bald spots. All right, I've come to the end of my section, so before I remove my needle, I just want to check and see how it's looking underneath, and that is looking really nice. So before I pull this needle out, I want my tail to end up on this side, so I am just going to pull the needle away, hold on to the loop, pull the needle away, take my snippers, and now I've got all of my tails, both of them, from the beginning and the end, on the front side of my work. And that's going to help me to avoid accidentally pulling those out later. So that's how you would fill a section. And you would do that through the entire rug. So now what I want you to work on is punching in as much as you can on this section of your gripper frame. And when you come to the point where you can punch no further, I want you to stop, don't cut your yarn. Meet me in the next video, and I'm going to show you how to move your work so that it looks continuous when you're finished. Doesn't have any stop and start points. So punch as much as you can, and then let's go to the next video and I'll teach you how to move your work on the frame.